guys, I am Pixel Dan, and today we are going to be checking out the Masters of the Universe Origins Tongue Lasher creature with the venomous tongue. That is right, my friends. We are continuing on with the rise of the Snake Men with another of the classic additions to that faction. My personal favorite Snake Man, and the one who looks the most not like a snake. But I'm really excited to get this guy here in the line, so let's dive in and take a look at it. He does come on that new Rise of the Snake Men packaging that we've been seeing continuing into 2023 here. So it's got the Snake Men logo up here behind the Masters logo, the Snake Men sticker on the blister bubble, and then we also have the scales kind of on the actual bubble itself there, so pretty cool. The figure is in front of a brand new mini comic. Also, of course, no more burst up here, which is interesting. So we don't have like the new for 23 or anything like that. Still have that modern posing retro play burst, but also letting us know that he has a forked tongue included to strike enemies. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that feature works. But as we rotate around to the backside of the packaging, the top features some gorgeous artwork as always. Absolutely love to see that trend continue here. Here we've got Tongue Lasher doing battle with Cyclone. So hopefully that means Cyclone is on the way very soon. And then down below that, we've got a cross-sell with all of the figures in this particular wave, as well as our action feature callout, which shows that you just plug the tongue in on this version. So very different from the vintage iteration of this figure. Let's go ahead and get this guy opened up, and we will get a closer look at him. Alright, so before we take a look at the figure, it is worth noting it comes with a brand new mini comic titled Assassin's Aim, and of course it features all 4 of the characters from this particular wave, being Roboto, Hypno, and Snake Armor Skeletor, along with Tongue Lasher. Pretty fun stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about the Tongue Lasher action figure. Bringing in the tape measure like always to show you guys that the figure does stand right there at that 5.5-inch scale, slightly above that, but should fit right in with the rest of the figures in the Origins lineup. This has always been such a fun figure, in my opinion. I always loved Tongue Lasher, but even as a kid, I always knew that this guy looked more like a poison dart frog than he does a snake. Now, he does have teeth, right? He's got some nice little sharp teeth poking out there, but man, just like with the colors and the suction cup looking hands, fingers there, always had that poison dart frog look to him, especially since he's got that like tongue feature. So it's always just been a really fun looking character. I'm really happy to see him updated here for Origins. I love the bright, vibrant colors on this one. Like with all of the Origins figures, it is much more vibrant than even his vintage counterpart, who was already a brightly colored toy. But I love kind of like that pinkish purple color there with like the purple stripes on there, the yellow eyes. Very, very bright orange chest. It's like fluorescent there with a bright green snake emblem right there in the center. So we got a new torso there with way too many abs, just like on the vintage toy. You'll notice he's got those 3 fingers with like the little suction cup pieces there. This is not the same as Frogmonger's hands. I thought that when I had Frogmonger in my review just not too long ago, I thought those were going to be the same Tongue Lasher hands, but those were different. They actually held on to his accessory better. He had an indent in his hand to hold on to his accessory. These are much more like the vintage Tongue Lasher hands, which means just like on the vintage one, they don't really hold accessories too great. We'll get to that in just a bit. But honestly, kind of surprised he doesn't share that part with Frogmonger. He does have those crazy feet, just like on the vintage one. Of course, some of the added articulation here makes him stand out a little bit differently. Looks great with a nice clean paint deco everywhere. It is worth noting there is no paint on the stripes on his back. That's an interesting choice. On the vintage toy line, there is 2 variants. There's one where this is painted purple and one where it's not painted purple. And I'm kind of surprised they opted to go with the unpainted version. Feels like this should be painted to me. But otherwise, I really like this guy. I think he looks pretty great. But let's go ahead and talk about the articulation here so you know what to expect. As I mentioned, the articulation is a little bit different than the vintage, of course, because do have that boot cut there, even though he's not actually wearing boots. And it is worth noting that those are removable, just like all the other figures in this line here. Otherwise, the ankles can move forwards and backwards and rock side to side, even though they got that weird shape to them there. Legs can go outwards, they can move forwards and backwards. The waist swivels left and right and can also pop apart off that peg there. The arms can go up at the shoulders, move forwards, backwards, can also pop out of those sockets there for interchangeability. You got swivels at the elbow, a bend at the elbow, swivel at the wrist, hinge at the wrist, and that brings us to the head, which is on the usual ball joint that we typically see, so it can look all around. And yes, you can also pop that off the ball joint just like all the other figures. I usually go the articulation the other way around, but I saved the head for last because I think you guys know what this means. The interchangeable head means that he does not have the same action feature as the vintage toy. And I'm just going to bring that vintage toy in for a second to remind you guys that he did this. Oh, how cool is that, right? So he had this little wheel on his back, and when you turned that wheel, it made the tongue jut in and out of his mouth. Bloop. Blip, blip, blip. So instead of doing an action feature on this one, Mattel opted to retain the interchangeable parts there and the articulation in the head, and instead we have a plug-in tongue. So this is handled a little bit differently than, say, the Masters of the Universe Classics line. In that line, we just had an alternate head with a tongue sticking out. This time we have this pliable, soft tongue. It is colored similar to the vintage one where it fades into a yellow from green, and that will just plug into the slot in the front of his mouth there. Now I will say it's a nice tight grip. It holds really well, and it definitely helps to complete the look of the character. And when it's removed, it looks a lot like the vintage one just because of that little slot right there, except you can't see the little forked tongue sticking out of it slightly. So here's a fun trick too with the tongue, because like, you know, when you plug it in like this, it just kind of goes downwards, just like on the vintage action figure, but you actually can flip this upside down and it still plugs into the mouth just fine, but now you've got a tongue that's pointing a little bit more upwards, as if he's actually lashing the tongue. So this is pretty cool if you want to get some poses with him and more of like an action stance where he's using his tongue for attack. So I do like that quite a bit. It's a very pliable, flexible tongue, so I don't know if eventually it will bend and fold down, but you know, out of the package, it's kind of designed just to be like this where it lays downwards. So being able to flip it around just for some variance in display is actually pretty cool. So I will say this works well. It seems to function good and it looks good on the figure. However, this is going to be one of those cases where I feel like the lack of the action feature slightly takes away from the fun. Now, this goes both ways because maybe you don't care about action features at all, and sometimes I'm like that with these figures. Sometimes I think it's totally fine that we remove the action features. I just said that with Mechanic. But with Tongue Lasher, I don't know. The tongue going in and out felt like part of the fun, part of the charm of the vintage toy, and I'm kind of sad to see it go. Now, a lot of you could argue that you felt that way about Mechanic's neck, and I did not. So, you see what I'm saying? Could really go both ways. Depends on your personal feelings on it. I am a little sad that he doesn't have that feature, but this does work good the way they did it, so at least we've got the option to display him this way. Now, what doesn't work quite as good are his accessories. And honestly, that's just staying true to the original. The accessories look nearly identical to that vintage one. We've got the dark purple Snakeman staff, and we've got this teal blue dragonfly crossbow. I always thought it was really interesting that Tongue Lasher got a crossbow like the Horde members. It's really interesting, right? Because the other Snake Men basically just got the snake staffs. They are a bit more pliable. At least the dragonfly crossbow is a bit more pliable than the vintage one, which was a much harder plastic. But they do look very similar. Now, because of these fingers, you can't really get them to hold it like traditionally because you can see it's much too loose. So just like on the vintage one, what you have to do is slide it in between the three fingers like this so that he can actually get a grip on it. And the snake staff is exactly the same. Like, you cannot get him to hold it like this because his two suction cupped, or like the little balls at the ends of his fingers, won't fit through that one slot on the snake staff. So you just have to fit one finger through, putting the staff kind of weaving between the three fingers there. It's the only way to get him to hold on to those accessories. Now, with that being said, he does actually get a pretty good grip like this. In fact, it is a bit of a better grip than the vintage one. It does just look a little weird seeing him hold things with his fingers like this. I don't know. I always thought that was a bit odd with Tongue Lasher. All right, guys, it's comparison time. Now, I brought him in briefly just a little bit ago, but let's go ahead and stand them alongside the vintage one with the accessories so you can see what these guys look like side by side. And there you go, my friends. That is a look at the brand new Masters of the Universe Origins Tongue Lasher. All in all, I do really like this guy. I think he's a very fun figure. The figure feels really good in your hands. It functions really well. I wish we had a little bit more paint on the back, but that could be me being nitpicky. And, you know, the tongue feature, it works fine. So it's really going to be your personal preference on if you miss the actual action feature. We're really rounding out the Snake Men in this line already. We just need Snake Face and Squeeze in there. But boy, look at that batch of snakes. Pretty cool stuff. So this guy, interestingly, hasn't shown up for pre-order yet at the usual places like Big Bad Toy Store, but has started popping in stock already at places like Amazon. So keep your eyes peeled, because if they're showing up in stock there, that should mean that they should be coming to retail stores and to some of those other websites very, very soon. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video, and until next time.